The EU Digital Markets Act. This is a huge flippin' deal. The EU Parliament on Thursday reached an agreement on a package of laws called the Digital Markets Act to curb technology companies' anti-competitive conduct. It's so obvious. Okay. Oh man, I want to start a
hot takes.
Hot
takes.
I want to start a new streak with no spicy takes.
No, you already did.
No, but it is so infuriating dealing with Apple apologists, or really any big tech company apologist, kind of across the board,
to be honest.
Where they go, oh, but the benefits are blah. No, they told you the benefits are that. The real benefits are this, and that's it. That's actually it. And anyone who wants to try to justify, like, oh man, the Epic versus Apple thing was one that was particularly frustrating, because on Twitter, people would just have these long back and forths that I'm tagged in, or they would send me these long tweet threads about how, bad Epic is and how they're only in it for the money and this and that. And it's like, no, you just obviously do not understand the issue. Anyone that argues against right to repair or free and open competition is just incorrect, because if you are anyone other than a significant shareholder in that company or an executive of that company, there is nothing in it for you. There is literally nothing in it for you to anti-competitive behavior. You want competition. The more, the absolute merrier. And apparently the EU Parliament has figured it out, which is kind of amazing, because they certainly don't get everything right.
I would also like to say that it's cool that this legislation is applying to what they're calling gatekeeper companies that have a value of over 75 billion euros on annual sales of 7.5 billion euros and 45 million monthly users. And platforms? That note "and platforms" is kind of odd. I'm not sure exactly where that's supposed to be.
And platforms, I think, probably has a specific definition.
Yeah, just dropping it there, floating, is a little interesting. But basically, it seems like they're just trying to target actual big dog players.
Yes.
Which is kind of nice, because some of these, I think they shoot a little too low into companies that are still extremely in the small business range, and that it's like kind of rough for them to deal with it sometimes. But companies at that size, of course, they can absorb basically whatever. So yeah, sweet. Try to make the world better.
So the proposed rules would require ensuring interoperability of their instant messaging services basic functionality. I mean, this is something we should all be outraged didn't happen. I mean, was it leaked communication? I think it was leaked communication from Apple, where they talked about interoperability between iMessage and other messaging apps, and not doing it in order to increase friction for abandoning the iPhone.
Yeah.
Like, to make sure that parents wouldn't buy nice shiny iPhones for themselves and cheap Android kicker phones for their kids, to make sure that they have iMessage, which has always been kind of baffling to me why anyone gives two hoots about iMessage.
Yeah.
It was really cool for like a few months, because you could send text messages over data.
Every time we talk about it, some people come out of the woodwork and
tell us how stupid we are for not thinking iMessage is amazing.
Yeah, and then all the reasons that they list, I'm like, oh, I don't care.
I could not possibly care less.
Yeah, I don't know.
So we know, and to be clear, there's no way that it's only Apple. Don't kid yourself.
Oh, yeah. It's just an easy example because there was that leak.
Especially now that they're all data-based. Not like in a database, based on data rather than SMS.
Okay.
Especially now that they're all based on data, there is absolutely no reason that they couldn't operate compatibly with each other.
There's going to be some weird stuff, like Apple has that.
Like animojis,
yeah,
for example.
They have certain features.
So, the thing is, too, though, that if they are forced to be interoperable, then Apple could say, okay, look, yeah, the processing's on you, but an Animoji is just a short video.
I'm not 100% certain how it
Yeah,
works.
that's what it is.
Okay.
So basically, it scans your face with their 3D dot nonsense.
Oh, okay, and it's just
And
masks
then,
it or whatever.
yeah,
Okay.
and so you can make facial expressions. It records that and then sends it. So Apple probably has an abstracted, because they can assume that all of the assets are available on the other device. Apple could probably do it with very little data transmission. But if Apple were to say, okay, yeah, well, we'll process it into a video, but it's on you to download and decode that video. Like, that's your problem. You store that on your servers. That's a way that it could be interoperable.
I also wonder to what degree they have to be interoperable, because you could send a message but then have certain features not necessarily work, because I'm sure live streaming to someone from a Discord chat to a iMessage chat would probably be pretty complicated. But and like potentially sending an emoji the other way efficiently might be kind of annoying or complicated or whatever as well. But you could send text messages, which is the bulk of both of those platforms anyways. So
Right.
like, does that count as interoperability? They're technically working together, just not full features. I think that would be fine, personally.
Floofderp says, every time someone SMSs me and tells me to use WhatsApp, I reply via SMS and tell them I don't use Facebook/Meta services. I mean, yeah, okay. Why don't you tell them to use Telegram or Signal then? Like, the point is that you don't need iMessage. Nobody needs iMessage.
Yeah.
Okay, also, the ability to opt to use other safe App Store alternatives. That's huge. That's exactly what Epic Games was going for with their lawsuit. So if this goes through, if Apple is forced to open it up in the EU, if nothing else, legislators in other parts of the world would have to take another look at Apple and Google, for that matter, at both Apple and Google's behavior around their App Store and Play Store.
Yeah, this would be sweet.
Yep. The right to uninstall preloaded apps. Like, this is just such an obvious list of things that no consumer should oppose.
I wonder. So this isn't just applying to phones, right? So this would apply to Windows.
Finally,
That's pretty interesting, because
Finally.
Windows 7 is getting real gross.
It's-
just to be honest.
It's almost like the legislators might be actual people who actually use these freaking products and have the same bloody frustrations that we do. Why do I have to have an app that I do not want? There is no good reason for it other than F you, Linus. That's it.
Sorry, I just lost the internet for a second, but I'm back. Yeah.
The rules would require businesses to be able to access data that they generate. Now, that one, I'm not 100% sure of the meaning of.
Yeah. Me neither. And why is it just businesses?
Yeah. Not,
Because I believe there's a certain amount of, like, you can request your data from platforms as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Was that not afforded to businesses?
that I don't know.
I'm not certain.
Advertising transparency with tools to verify ad reach. Okay, that's super cool, because I remember the handful of times that we played around with boosted posts on Facebook. As far as we could tell, there was just no real rhyme or reason to it. Sometimes you'd spend a little bit and get a lot. Sometimes you'd spend a lot and get a little. And I just was like, okay. And it almost just feels like they're taking like a behavioral conditioning approach to it, where you spend a little bit and it gives you a lot and kind of gets you, yeah, come on. Right? Because obviously it's in their best interest to optimize the amount of money that you spend on advertising and find that perfect balance where you won't stop spending money. So it's effective enough, but not too effective, because, well, there's only a finite amount of inventory, finite number of eyeballs.
So as someone who's been on both sides, you've essentially bought advertisement through Facebook, like you said, and I know there's been purchase advertisement outside of that, I believe.
Yep.
And a big part of your business is creating content that gets ads on it. Do you think this will help? Because we've been talking for a long time about how YouTube has always been in this weird space where traditional advertisers are like, podcasts? Yeah, podcasts are great. But then YouTube has just been like weird. They don't really want to sponsor YouTube for some reason. Do you think this might help?
No, I don't think so, because Google and YouTube in particular already do a pretty excellent job of overall transparency.
But I mean, this would apply to. I shouldn't have been so specific
Hold on.
about YouTube.
Can I clarify? It's not overall transparency. Transparency with respect to advertising impressions and things like that, at least on the YouTube side. I know that there's been a lot of nonsense around, like, you'd see websites back in the day that had like 25 banner ads at the bottom of them, and it's like way below the fold and nobody ever saw it. Like, okay, sorry, carry on.
Yeah. So I shouldn't have been so specific about YouTube because you guys make content on Instagram and TikTok.
Oh yeah, I guess we do.
Facebook and everything else. Do you think it would help on those?
I doubt it. I think that influencer marketing is already pretty well accepted by most brands. I mean, there are exceptions. I'd say that when you get into really like stuffy, slow-moving industries, like I remember the first time we talked to a tool company, or rather, I should say, I remember the first time we didn't talk to a tool company because they, just had absolutely internet. What's that?
Oh my.
As far as I could tell, they were still sending POs by mail. Like, it was just ridiculous. And
I wouldn't be surprised.
YouTube, who would watch YouTube? Lots of people watch YouTube. Right? So
your successor.
Yeah, it's really hard to say. I think you just have to wait for, marketing summits and people to just kind of figure it out in time. Okay. Yeah, I think it's reached a critical mass already.
More self-preferencing, so Google can't put shopping service at the top of each search results. I don't think they do that too much these days.
Well, they shouldn't do it at all.
They definitely sell a lot of search results, way more than I feel like they did in the past. I've started shifting to DuckDuckGo.
Yeah, purely because entire above the fold is just ads now.
Google has become less efficient, genuinely. Yep. Like, I'm not necessarily switching there for privacy reasons or whatever else, which is great, and I'm happy that they have that. But I'm switching because it's literally faster, because the Google results are just, it's an entire page of sponsors.
It's really frustrating. Companies would also be barred from combining personal data for targeted advertising without consent. Wow. Platform owners can no longer require app developers to use certain services to be listed in app stores. So that would include payment processors. So you could use your own payment processor. Notably, Google is trialing allowing Spotify to use a third-party payment processor on the Play Store. Of course, this shouldn't be a trial. This should just be, no, you actually just have to do that. If they have the means to use their own payment processor, then
yeah. Sweet.
It needs to be open and competitive, and allow app developers fair access to supplementary functionalities of smartphones. This is a really interesting one, and obviously there's going to be something more recent, but I'm reminded of when I think it was the gyro in one of the very early iPhones that was locked off from developers early on.
Oh.
Do you remember that? And there was a whole controversy around that.
I don't remember what part it was, but I do believe I remember this. I don't know. There's been a lot of Wayne Show topics.
Guys, let us know. Let us know in the float plane chat if you can think of an example of a supplementary functionality of a smartphone that developers have not had fair access to. And when you think fair access, you could think of it in terms of that it is being monetized by the first-party company in a way that third parties cannot compete with. NFC on the iPhone, says Jax. Yeah, it has NFC on it. But Apple's like, that's our NFC. Okay.
You don't get to use it.
Yeah, NFC. That's a really great example. So stupid.
And currently relevant.
Yep. And they would have to inform the European Commission of their acquisitions and mergers. Penalties for violations. This is where things get really interesting.
So good. This makes me so happy. Okay, go for it.
Could be as high as 10% of annual global revenues, or even 20% for repeated infractions.
Which is good, because so many times when something happens with one of these companies, they get the most minute slap on a wrist.
Yeah.
that they like genuinely don't care about.
It's
It
just
reminds
cost of
me
doing
of when
business.
like people shower some like super hyper rich person in praise for donating money to something, and then they do a calculation and they're like, oh, if they have an average income, this was like literally $8. And it's like, okay. It's like, it feels like that. It's like, oh my goodness, Facebook got fined for $1 million.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, Facebook doesn't care. It's like you
They
got to hit them
probably
harder.
made $1 million while you were talking about it. Like it's
Yeah. Like you gotta get harder than that. So this is good. This might mean it's actually enforced, because a lot of things are just ignored because it's more convenient and sometimes literally cheaper to just pay the fee, and that's stupid. So I'm happy it's expensive. Wording of legislation is yet to be finalized. There was a few things in here that felt a little vague, so that probably makes sense. It will be approved by the European Union, Parliament, and Council later, I guess. If passed, it would go into effect in October.
our discussion question here, and honestly, we'd love for you guys to join us in the chat and talking about this, is which of those things are you most excited for? Honestly, it's hard to decide. They're all amazing.
I think because of my particular context, being able to use like outside payment stuff in app stores is pretty huge, because that's big for Floatplane in particular.
Beefire just outed themselves as someone who doesn't get it. More government control. You'd think Canadians would have learned. No. This is a government body stepping in to reduce corporate control. Everything here is about loosening an iron fist. How is it not clear? Like, this is one of those things I just don't get it. How can you oppose being allowed to remove crap you don't want from your devices?
When companies are valued in the hundreds of billions, they have control over something.
And companies
as a rule,
being forced to make their products interoperable. How can you oppose pro-consumer legislation? Because they won't do it on their own. That is the role of a government, to make sure that things are operating as they are supposed to for the benefit of the citizens. Come on. Oh, I just
also,
can't.
other than the end platforms quote, which we're still a little bit unsure about, this is applying to companies with a value of over 75 billion euros.
Yeah. Like, yeah, good.
This is not applying to the average person.
Exactly. Exactly.
Silence, brand.
Skateboy 208 says, I'd like my rights back to own my device inside and out. Yeah, 100%. 100%. It just makes me angry when people just buy into the propaganda like that. And honestly, I don't even necessarily blame the individuals. Like, the right to repair argument is so full of nonsense that it is legitimately really hard to filter out the BS.
Yeah.
Like, you've got companies talking about how it will destroy the very fabric of the universe if
farmers are allowed to fix their own tractors,
Yeah.
which they've been doing forever and are extremely good at it.
Exactly, man. If you ever want to go down a rabbit hole, make your way into farming YouTube. It's nuts, the kind of tech that some of these supposed, hicks or whatever, you take your stereotypical farmer as portrayed in the media. A lot of these folks are nothing like that. They are as tech savvy as anyone, smart as a whip. Like, just, yeah, I love it. The kind of tech that is making food growing more scalable than ever is just amazing.
One of the things I've always found interesting in that space is the mixture of kind of old and new tech. So they'll take like old school, non-computerized, like this is like how the world works style, like physics tech, which farmers have been using forever. And they'll mix it with like monitoring softwares and all this type of stuff. And it's so cool. I don't know. I think it's awesome. Really smart stuff.